Just a quick one before we dive in. I've just opened up 2 brand new ways to work with me. If you're an established beauty professional who's ready to increase your revenue, either in your clinic or by moving into the online mentoring and educational space, you can join me for a 2-month container where we build and validate your first online offer or your next big move. Or if you're ready to go all in, there is a 7-month private mentorship where we build, launch and scale your new revenue stream together. If you're not sure which one's right for you, I'm offering a handful of free business clarity calls, quick and powerful to map out your fastest path and to see which container fits best. Just DM me the word revenue on Instagram or check the link in the show notes and email me. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Beauty Build podcast with me, Zara King. As a coach for beauty pros, it is my mission to help you earn more, work less, and create an unstoppable mindset. This is the show where we explore all of that. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your beauty business, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and join us on the journey. And for more, get yourself inside my private community, The Beauty Build on Facebook.
Hello, you gorgeous human you, and welcome back to another episode with me, Zara King, mother of 3, beauty business coach. I hope you're having the best day today. I wanted to come on and do this episode because something has really been shifting my energy the last few days, and I've had people in my messages on Instagram talking about it, and my energy has just been so all over, and it's sparked this conversation in me. And it is all about the toxicity in the beauty industry, particularly on Instagram, because what I've been seeing is so toxic and negative, and it really ruins my energy. And when I say energy, I mean, you know, when you feel like a tightness in your chest and you feel annoyed and you begin to get grumpy, and you might even say something like, oh my fucking God, that's ridiculous. That's probably the words roughly that came out of my mouth when I saw a couple of things. And then you get stuck in the rabbit hole. Like you scroll, you go back to the person that sent you it. You're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Why is everybody doing this, saying this? You get stuck in the rabbit hole of this content that's negative. And you might even notice as well that somebody that you follow, like a good friend of yours in the industry, has liked this as well. And you might be thinking, what is this? It looks a bit negative. And then you look into it and you realize that it is. And then you think, why did they like it? But it could also be that it was kind of covered with a kind of less negative carousel image on the cover. And it all becomes quite problematic because then you get going. You keep looking at the comments. You don't comment, but you keep looking at the comments. Then you go onto that person's page. You think, well, they've commented that, but their work's this. And you begin to spiral into this like toxic energy place, this negative energy space. And for me, like, I'm always super positive and super aware of my energies. That's the first step with making sure you're in a good energy, is being so aware of your surroundings and also your internal dialogue and how those things have a physiological response inside your body. And I'm really aware of that. I'm so aware of that stuff. So that's why I'm bringing this episode to you, because if the physiological response is happening in my body, I bet it's happening in other people's too, and that they probably want to get away from it as such. So I'm getting into that today. And the type of stuff I've been seeing, on Instagram isn't about clients. It's not about, there is some about technique and stuff, but it's the constant professionals making content, which is clearly just for the sake of engagement, with a bit of rage bait, and they're tearing each other down, for example, or one person does it to the other and then they clap back. Now, first and foremost, sometimes I look at it and I just think, would you say that shit to their face? Would you? I should have prefaced this with a little bit of swear words, sorry, because sometimes when I get passionate about things and it affects my internal body in this way, I do have a tendency to swear. Anyway, there might be an odd swear word today. But I do think that, and maybe you think it too when you see certain pieces of content, you think, would you actually say that to their face? Or are you just pushing it out for content purposes, for engagement purposes? Because 9 times out of 10, like, you probably wouldn't say it face to face, but we're okay because we hide behind these screens, maybe. So this episode is probably going to ruffle a couple of feathers. You're going to have to let me know your thoughts. There's all of the bits and bobs you can do. You can send me a text. That's on top of the description of this episode and all of my episodes. You can reach out to me. You can comment on these as well, I believe, if you're listening on Spotify. You can reach out to me on my socials. I'm happy with that. And we can continue the conversation. But just to give you an example. So I'm going to go through a few things. I've actually written down my thoughts on the topic because I want to stay quite streamlined today. I want to be able to say what I want to say and help people. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. I've already done that a little bit, but I'll go into a bit more of an example. I'll tell you what my stance is a bit more, and then I'm going to talk about why it matters so much. And then I'm going to give you some tangible tips at the end of the episode as to what you can do to make sure that you do shift away from this kind of thing. So that's where we're going with the episode anyway. Let me give you more of an example. So one particular example that's happened recently is a UK educator calling out somebody else, another educator from America, from the US. And these people are completely such long-standing people in this industry. And they are reputable, they work with good brands, they've even created their own products, things like that in the nail industry. They are professional people. And so you've got one professional over here in the UK who's also very reputable, does great work, all the rest of it, calling out somebody else that, again, does great work, and you think, make it make sense. And what happens is one post will go out, or in this example, one post went out and it completely spiraled. And those comments on that post were quite nasty, just quite negative, really calling people out. Not just saying oh, I disagree or my stance is this. No, full on, telling the other people they're wrong. They're just wrong and they need to do better and all the rest of it. And you just think, what? And you see so many sheep jumping on and commenting and then commenting more. And then what's happened since is then from that example that I'm talking about, somebody else has then made another piece of content completely not related to not related to the instance. They weren't involved in the instance. So they make their own content around it because they know that it's now the new, let's call it glove gate. They know it's, that's high topic in the industry, in the nail industry. So they make their own content about it. Great, because they know it's going to be good for engagement. Again, whether their intention was to be rude or not, who knows? Whether their intention is just to get clicks and comments, who knows? But the thing is, I think that then what happened in this example is somebody did do the clap back. Someone made I call it a clap back. It wasn't a rude clap back, but sometimes they are. In this example, somebody came back from the US and said, they said actually what my thoughts were. And it was taken out of context, things like that, or stand by this, or this is what we mean by this. And you know what? I just think a lot of the time with these pieces of content, it is a small snippet of a much larger conversation. That's what's happened in this example. They've taken the person has taken a small snippet of conversation and posted it to their account over in the US, and they thought that's great. But then the UK person's gone, I'm going to have that short snippet of that full-on conversation and I'm going to give them my stance on it, but it's created this negative issue. It's created this negative piece of content, basically telling them they're wrong and they need to do better and all the rest of it. And then you get all the nasty comments. And it's all for engagement. And I just think, can you imagine being a new person in this industry that's only just started their business in 2018? And that sounds like a while ago, I know, but when you've got people that have been in this industry for 40 odd years, 20 odd years, 15 years, and then you've got somebody that's just started out 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, they're still quite fresh to the industry, or maybe they started yesterday. Can you just imagine being a person like that and scrolling through and seeing, that post went out, then she took that and made this negative post about it, and then they've come back and said this about it, and actually my thoughts exactly were, well, it was only a small part of a massive conversation. Everything gets blown up, everything gets taken out of context, there's so many comments, there's hundreds of comments, people being nasty. Goodness me. If you were new and you were scrolling past, you've seen all this, you're trying to put the dots together and you get stuck in the scroll hole, a bit like I did. I was looking around thinking, blimey neck, what's going on here? And it's not okay. Why people think this is okay, I don't know. I actually don't know. Look at the ripple effect that it has on the industry. Look at the ripple effect, and you can preface it with, oh, I want to raise the industry. No, you don't, because you're doing it by tearing down, in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, I know that there is a marketing element to this. This is marketing 101. It's attract and repel. I do it in my content. Everybody does it. We want to attract our dream people and we want to repel everybody else. But what you have to remember is that there is always an angle, and there's a responsibility as well, because when you are talking about safe practices and calling people out for that, you also have a responsibility for what the ripple effect is of you putting out things in such a negative way, because what it does is it creates divide and it makes people argue, and it creates such a rage, which is so negative, and it lasts for a while, and it can go very wide, and it can travel far and wide really fast. And so there's a responsibility there with that. And instead of, using your large following and using your large platforms to create massive divide and argument and negativity, we could do it in such a better way. And the other thing as well to note is that there is always the fact that as soon as you have this rage, this sort of negativity, all these comments, all of this engagement, it leads to your account blowing up. Great. And then the numbers get bigger and bigger, and then people trust you more. And then there's always an angle. There's always you want to sell something. And so people will trust you more if you've got a larger following, and so they'll buy from you. And so that's where the responsibility really comes in. And I think, the feelings that are going to come up for people when they see it is things like anxiety. Well, that's not a positive feeling, isn't it? Anger, rage, outrage. Well, that's also not a positive thing. And this is what the content's being created for. It's being created to get people going. That's the what's the word? The motive behind it is to get people going. And it's just not okay, in my opinion. So my stance on it is this, and I want to be really clear. I don't name and shame people, because for me, it's not what it's for. I am all about, if I saw something ridiculous being done online that I knew was fake, I might do one of those reels where I'll put my, green screen it, and I might give my thoughts and opinions. And then what I'll do is I'll give my positive, here's what you can do to not let that happen to you. That is what I've done, things like that in the past. Or, if I comment, I very rarely comment on stuff like this, but if I do, it's always in a positive spin, or it's always in a way of, this is what you can do to avoid or whatever, because I don't think that's what content is for. And that is my stance on it. I think content should be out there to educate people, to inspire people, to connect with people, obviously, and to help people grow, not to create anxiety. Not to cause this division in industries among professionals. Professionals. Both so credible. Both so very bloody good at what they do. So bloody good at what they do. Why would you want to create and make people think, I'm really scared that I'm going to end up on that page? I just would not want my content to be associated with that feeling. That's not the brand I want to, that's not my brand message. I want people to be like, oh God, Zara's going to call us out. No. I mean, my coaching clients literally will say to me that I slap them across the face in the best way possible on our calls, because I can be direct, I can be to the point, I can be blunt, but for your best interest, not by tearing you down, not by shaming you. And that is why they say, God, you call me out on bullshit in the best possible way, the best way, because there's ways of doing these things. And it's not by dividing whole industries. It's really not. And what I do want to talk about as well is why this kind of call-out culture exists. I've touched on it, but I just want to go a bit deeper with this. Think about it. I've got a friend, right? This reminds me of a friend I have. She's a TV producer. And she always used to say to me, don't forget that there is always an angle. What is their motive? What is the angle that they want this to be coming from? And I think most people, when they scroll, they can just look past that and they can just feed into whatever is in front of them, right? But you need to look a bit deeper and think, what is the actual angle here? Do you know what I mean? The algorithm, the outrage, the rage bait at the moment, the algorithm loves it. Why does it love it? Because you're keeping people on the platform for longer. That piece of content has got people not only liking it, saving it, sharing it, putting it on their stories. It's got people commenting on it, and then the people commenting on it are replying to other people's comments on it. They're liking other people's comments. And you know what? If you've commented, you're going back to check if somebody else liked your comment because you want to see if yours was a good comment. Like, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, this rage bait stuff. And that is why people are doing it. And that is why the call out culture exists in this industry. And it's not just this industry. We can talk about that in a minute. But it's literally rife at the moment because it gets you more engagement. And let's be honest, a bit of outrage equals comments. Comments equals more reach, equals more growth on your account. We know that, and we know that it's easy content. It's not like you woke up and you thought, what do my audience really need to hear from me today? Whoever's posting this is waking up thinking, oh, that person done this, I don't agree with it. I'm gonna rage bait on this. I'm gonna post on it. You know, they're playing the game. It's not an original piece of content. You could talk about your stance in a completely different way. And I don't mind, you know, reaction content. I think it's good. And I think it can highlight both accounts. And there is somebody in the fitness industry that does this actually really, really well. And he does call out, but he also will, you know, put positive spin on everything. And it lifts his account and the other person's account. It's a good way of creating content, don't get me wrong. Not having to be original every single minute of the day and not have to think of new ideas, because I know it's draining. Obviously, it's draining to create your own content all the time. So to talk about a topic like, look at me now, I'm creating a podcast about this type of thing going on because I've seen it and I'm reacting to it. And I can be responsive and create stuff from a responsive point of view. Of course I can, so can everybody. But there is a completely different way of going about it. And I think, in my opinion, it's wrong to be on this whole bandwagon of rage bait. I really do. And it's so toxic in the industry right now. So, you know, it's one of those things. And it really does matter, not only for us, i.e. the professionals in the industry, because it completely divides us, because you get people arguing in comment sections, which is ridiculous. But then it divides, well, it doesn't divide, but it's also not okay for clients, because it doesn't make the industry look very professional. And what it does is it actually makes it look quite catty and bitchy. And the thing is, right, if you've known me, if you've been in my world a little while, you'll know that when I started my beauty business back in 2011, I started it as something on the side alongside a corporate sales career, right? I used to think it's just something on the side, okay? Now, if I was also catty, unprofessional, all the rest of it, always in a negative energy, that is exactly what I would get back. So for a long time, not that I was catty and unprofessional, but for a long time while I thought that the business and the industry wasn't serious, I was attracting clients that didn't think my business or the industry was serious. So as well, you've got to think about, like, what you put out, you receive. If you're not respecting the industry and the people in it that make it, by the way, then what makes you think that you should demand respect from clients in this industry? And for new nail techs, like I've mentioned, new brow techs, new lash techs, new people going into skin, if they scroll past this type of content and they're like, what the frick is going on? They're going to be anxious. They're going to think, oh, I need to be perfect straight away from the get-go. They're going to be worrying that they're going to get it wrong. They're going to be shamed in a comment section. And you know, like, it reminds me, when I was younger, I always had, my dad would say something along the lines of, if you got nothing nice to say nothing at all. You know, and also that people in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones. Now, I mention that because in this particular example, I've gone down the rabbit hole. And this is why I'm doing this episode, because it really shifted my energy. And I thought, oh my goodness, if something can shift my energy that much, imagine what it does to people that haven't been in the industry as long or whatever. I looked at comments from some of the people that agreed with one side of the party, let's just say. And what they were saying was completely contradicted on their page. Completely. I could see it in the first reel on their page that what their practice looked like completely contradicted what they were saying that they agreed with in the comment section. Make it make sense. Now, obviously, I could have commented and said, if I was nasty, if I was a horrible person, I could have commented and said, oh, so you're telling me you agree with this? But looking at your page, you're giving off X, Y, and Z actually. Do you know what I mean? But why would I do that? I wouldn't do that, but someone else might. And this is what happens. People get down this rabbit hole. People keep clicking and going, oh, who's she? Oh, where's she come from? How long has she been in the industry then? What does her practice look like? And they start, and it just creates more negativity. So I think what we have to do is we have to zoom out, and we have to add a little bit of nuance to this as well. Okay, now, I am going to touch on this because this is what really gets my goat about this particular example. And if you're on Instagram, if you're in the nail industry, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't, just for an example, like I said, it was one person from the UK and somebody else from the US. And I just want to state on here, and I think I've mentioned it again when we were talking about pricing in this industry on an interview with somebody. I think it was when I interviewed Anona. We were talking about like pricing and the difference between the UK and the US. Well, it's actually the same for things like legislation, licensing. And I need to touch on it because it's not a fair comparison with people. Like when you're calling out education, when you're calling out safety measures, when you're calling out stuff like that, let's be seriously honest. The US licensing is state by state, okay, for the beauty industry. There are board regulations, right? It's much more black and white out there. Some places they have to renew their licenses and stuff, right? Let's talk about the UK. It is a completely different world. There is no national licensing. It is council by council. There are bloody day courses, for example, to get yourself qualified. Now, I don't advocate for that, but you know what I mean. There is nothing in this country that is legislated properly. Okay, so it's really not an accurate or fair comparison to be calling someone out on what they think is correct when the regulatory system is so different. It's so different. And so if something is not a legal requirement, how are you going to sit here and say this is my way or the highway and you're completely wrong and shame them for that? Maybe just open a dialogue. And this is why as well, like I said before, when people are taking, I don't know, like a few seconds out of a clip of a video, like I might put a clip of this podcast onto my reels, and yes, it'll be a juicy piece of the conversation, for example. Well, someone might take that and take it out of context and do a rage bait reel about it. But was that the intention of my actual conversation? No. And that's what this is. And I think when you're doing that across the world with each other as well, it's even more ridiculous because things are completely different in our side of the world. So I hope that's making sense. I feel better already by talking about it all. I really do. I know it's just me and my mic, but I do feel better already. But yeah, I want you all to just think about the bigger picture because it's so much more of a wider issue. And it's not just in the beauty industry either. It's across industries. Like I mentioned the fitness industry, didn't I, a minute ago, about one particular guy who calls out and he does different like reaction videos and stuff. It's everywhere. There's calling out culture in like coaching, in beauty, fashion, fitness, everything, cooking, all sorts of things. You know, you see this stuff everywhere. It begins to get political, like it's crazy. But I think it does erode the credibility of the content. You can disagree with me. I'm cool with that. But I think when your content is built on negativity, let's think about it like this. What happens when the drama dies down? If that's what your content is built on. It means you've got to find something else, surely. And that, in my eyes, is just bad energy. You know, I saw all this going on. I posted a story about it. 1 or 2 swear bombs, I think, in my story. Not like the F word, nothing crazy. But you know when you just think, oh, it's not good energy. It is not good energy. And then you have the people that like it and all the rest of it. And you think, I don't want to get into this conversation too much. But I want to raise the energy when I see shit like that. I want to raise the energy. Not just for myself because of the physiological feelings I feel, but for also everyone else in the industry, because I do have a passion for this industry and I do want new people coming into this industry to actually think it's a nice place to be. And I think for a certain amount of time in my space, it always has been. But there are just like small times, they'll be going on for a couple of months where I keep seeing it. And I think I need to mute, I need to unfollow, I need to get rid, because obviously it's going to go on, isn't it? It's going to go on. But I think when you have a responsibility and you have like big accounts, not that I've got a big account, by the way, but I'm talking about the people that do. When you have that, there's almost more of a responsibility to not just mute and not just delete and block and remove. It's more of a responsibility to share and to maybe bring your opinions and to just bring a bit of nuance about it, open a dialogue about it, and actually just like not shame people about it. I think that's the biggest thing that gets me, is like the shaming. And then, because I think then when you get hundreds of people doing that in comments, it can be really detrimental. And that is what's happened. So, you know, here's the thing with me, like I'm so open to having feedback and growing and going, okay, cool, I can completely see your perspective, and I can think, oh, well, that's interesting, because the way you see it is different to the way I see it. And I do think that's fascinating sometimes, you know? And I think, but we can still all get along, and we can still all speak and be kind and be positive. That's why I don't shame people, you know? And even when I've checked in those comments, and like I said, I found those contradictions on a certain profile making statement in comments and putting somebody else down, and then I found contradictions over on their page, that, you know, that's also one of those things, like you have to check yourself, don't you? You can be humbled quite quickly. And it's not my place to do that to people. I don't want that to be my place. I'd much rather raise the standard. I'd much rather open dialogue and have a chat and, you know, sometimes get different perspectives and maybe change my mind. Oh my goodness, like, isn't it great that we can grow and that we can change, and sometimes my mind might be changed? I think that's amazing. It might be changed. And that's okay. It's also okay. But like, I prefer to remain professional, even though it's tough. It's bloody tough, because even, like I said, a couple of swear words and all that, and let my head go for a minute because I just think it's outrageous. I can think it's outrageous. And seeing like so many sheep, I just think sometimes, give your heads a wobble. That is what I wrote as well. Give your heads a wobble. Because I just think it comes down to remembering there's a bit of respect, you know? And I do also tend to match energy. So if somebody was rude and disrespectful to me, you better believe they wouldn't be getting my respect. Do you know what I mean? If I was disrespectful to somebody on their post as well, I wouldn't be expecting respect back. Okay, but in my own domain, in my own space, if I'm awful, come tell me, that's fine. But you know what I mean? I hope you see where I'm going with this. Sometimes there is a situation that does boil your blood, and you will get heated and say something. And again, it's okay. It's just that in this context, there's room for debate. There's room for debate. But in this context where it's, you know, where somebody takes something out of context just for rage bait, just for this engagement, and they get what they want, and the comments spike and the engagement skyrockets, and then the sharing happens, and then the new recreations happen. Yeah. I think we need to all do better. You know, that's that lovely little phrase that people keep banging on about. I think we need to all do better. So anyway, shall we move on? So let's talk about what you can do if you are a beauty pro listening to this, which you probably are, and you're probably a really positive one too, because most of the people that I attract, my dream clients that come into my world that I coach, are generally really positive people, and they don't get involved in drama. They don't. If you're a beauty pro listening to this and you don't want the drama and you don't want to let it drain your energy, there are a few things that I think you can do. The first one is not to waste your time on negativity. Have a look. If you see something and you feel yourself getting pulled in, just ask yourself, like, is this actually a waste of my time? Is this negative? If the answer is yes, let's just move on. And you can ask yourself as well, like, what would my highest self do? That is one question in business particularly that I do ask myself a lot. You know, if I need to get to a different goal in my business, I think, well, what would my highest self be doing? And that can be a really good question to ask yourself in situations like this. So that's the first one. Just try not to waste your time on it. Try to catch yourself, be aware, and actually ask yourself the question, like, is this negative? Is it negatively going to impact my energy, my life, my business, my brain, my mood today. That's the first thing. The second thing as well is actually build your own practice, because there are so many sources of information. And as long as you are qualified in this industry, I don't care what services you do, as long as you're qualified and you've done your practice and you're building your own way of doing things, and you know that you're doing things safely, you're not hurting anybody, you're not hurting yourself, stand by your own opinions, because people are allowed to disagree. So don't let things get to you in such a way that you think like you were going to change just to please somebody else. As long as you're doing things that you know are right, as per the legislation in your area, and you are doing things that work and they work for you and they're right and they're safe and you're not hurting nobody, build your own practice. The third thing is to protect your energy. So by this, I mean surround yourself with positive people. Don't get sucked into the toxicity. Don't look at the comment section. Stop there. Put your teeth back in, Zara. Don't get sucked into the comments section, which is so much easier said than done. I absolutely know. I hear you. But I'm just saying, like, just try not to get sucked into that comment section. And trust me, I need to take a leaf out of this book as well, because I know how hard it is. But keep your energy in a positive way. Focus on what matters. Surround yourself with the people that lift you up. Do something. If you feel yourself in negative energy, first and foremost, think about what you're grateful for. It's one of the best ways to shift a negative mindset into a positive. Okay? So think about something that you're grateful for straight away. That's really good. And then secondly, think about what you can do, hear, or see to change it up. Like, are you looking at something? Like, see. What are you seeing that's making you get negative? Let's change that. What are you doing? Is it because you're sat scrolling? Let's change that up. And what you're hearing, what you're listening to. Put something in your ears that's going to make you feel good. Whether it means putting some music on and dancing around the room, or whether it means putting a podcast on, whatever. Or speaking to somebody that lights you up. See, hear, do. Think about those three things and move your state from negative to positive, and just create that good energy. Because if you're focusing on what matters, which is your clients and your business, and of course your health and your family and your friends and yourself, those things are going to grow. Okay, what we focus on is going to grow. So that is number 3, protect the energy. Number 4, remember your clients. When you're scrolling on social media and when you're seeing this negative stuff, remember your clients. Remember what I said about the respect for the industry. You want respect from your clients. They also don't care about these dramas. What they care about is the experience that you give them and your results and your methods. That's what they care about. They care that they're in good hands and that they're getting what they want and a lovely experience, and that's what they care about. And your business and the success of your business is based on your clients. That is what you have if you're in this industry. You have a database of happy returning clients. That is your business. So that is what I want you to bring it back to. Remember the clients. And number 5, if you get imposter syndrome because somebody's posted something on social media that makes you feel a bit impostery, this is just a little bit of a bonus one for you. Just go and learn something more about that topic. Go and get a bit more clear on that thing, so that you can feel good in your knowledge, and so that you can either change things that you do and grow and take it as a lesson and be like, yeah, cool, I learned that. We learn something every day, by the way, right? Or you can go, I know what I know. And yeah, what I've learned has solidified what I know. And that's great. So that is what I would say if you've got that imposter that comes up from things like this, because it does happen. I mean, for me as well, like there's so many times, like, you know, you go into coaching and you think, am I good enough to do this? I've only been in the beauty industry for 10 years when I started coaching. 10 years. I thought, is that good enough? I've been mobile, salon-based, home-based. Is that good enough? Yeah, it is. Okay, cool. What can I keep doing to make myself better? I will get a certificate. Call me a coach. Perfect. I will learn more about coaching. I will learn more about NLP. I will learn more about human psychology. I will learn more. And guess what? It takes away the imposter. I'm not saying it's never going to go away fully, because no, I continue every single year to develop my skills. I continue to invest with mentors and with other courses and the business courses and all the rest of it. I continue to develop my knowledge. And that, what it does is it keeps that imposter syndrome at bay, so that even when someone posts something online that might ruffle my feathers or make me feel inferior, it keeps it at bay. I continue to learn, and I know I'm always learning, and I know I'm always open to learning and open to growth. That is one of the things I would say. But at the end of the day, I feel like I've said everything I've got to say, and I am actually a lot calmer now. When I first started this episode, it was like, oh, I've just written down everything I wanted to talk about. But I feel so much calmer, like getting it all off my chest. And that is another thing. You've got to move that energy like through your body. You've got to release it. But at the end of the day, look, engagement is temporary. I want to bring it back to the point of the conversation. This engagement stuff that's going on, this rage bait stuff for engagement, the toxicity that goes on, it is temporary. I want you to all remember that it is temporary. The credibility, the professionalism, the leadership that you show, all of those things, your standards, that is what lasts. That is what will stay with you, right? That will build your business. And you can keep that forever and no one can take it away. So stop playing this silly internet game. Stop being a sheep if you are, but I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, probably not. But raise the bar for yourself and raise the bar for the industry. Raise the bar for your clients. Raise the bar for everyone else. And remember also, one really, really key thing here is that your brand is not just your lovely graphics and your cute moody photos with the filters over them and the gorgeous text and all that gorgeous work that you do. Okay, it is the way you are making people feel across the board, and that is what people remember you for. And that's the question I think that you should ask yourself when you're creating content online. That is what you should ask yourself. What's the lasting effect? What is the feeling that I want people to feel? And what's that, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That is what I want you to be fully aware of when you're creating stuff like this. And I think that's a really good place to leave the episode, actually. So share it with somebody that needs to hear it. Pop it on your stories and tag me. Let me know your thoughts. Send me a text. There's like I said at the beginning, there's the send me a text option at the top of the description. If there's anything else you want me to cover in different episodes, if there's things that I missed out as well, or if there's things that I actually have no idea about that you think, Zara, why didn't you mention that? Maybe my knowledge just isn't there. Tell me. Let me know. We can have this conversation. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insights that will help you in your beauty business and life. If you did, please take a screenshot and tag me in your stories. If you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me on any of my socials. The links are always in the descriptions. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us improve and bring you more and more great content. Until next time, keep building that business.